Welcome back to Razmafzar TV. I'm having back Bede Dwyer from Australia, my friend Bede. Hi, Bede. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Yourself? Are you well?
Very good, Bede. It is very cold here, freezing cold. Last night it was -7 Celsius here where I live. So I think for an Australian, it's a bit too cold, isn't it?
Yeah, it's 25 where
Oh,
I'm sitting,
yes,
and we've had heavy rain, so it's actually much cooler today than it was a couple of
yes.
days ago. I went to archery on Sunday. You might be able to tell I'm a bit sunburnt. We had a southerly wind, which in Sydney is a cool wind, but the general temperature was around 32, 35, something like that.
For our
So
viewers here, just because I learned it from Bede, being used to United States and Europe, but not Australia, of course, I was really positively surprised that Australians also use Celsius and not Fahrenheit as we use in the United States. Correct, Bede?
yeah, we changed back in I think 1966.
Oh, God, a long
Um,
time ago.
we well, what happened was they decided we had the same currency names as Great Britain,
Oh,
pounds,
okay.
shillings, and pence, and the government decided that maybe we should go with dollars and cents. And then at the same time, they decided we should change from feet and inches into metric. And because I grew up, like I was 11 in 1966, so half my schooling was done in feet and inches. So I think in both still, and
Oh, okay.
I have no problem talking about arrow speeds in feet per second rather than meters per second, which is more logical. Simply because that's how they, since the 1920s or 30s, because we didn't talk about arrow velocity before the 30s of last century. I mean,
Huh.
people, how can you talk about it when you can't measure it? It's it's a thing that we don't think of because all this equipment is available to us. I've got two chronographs uh, for measuring velocity. I'm thinking of buying a third because it measures velocity at various distances on the same arrow, so I can work out drag coefficients and all that kind of thing. Uh, More probably for publication than practical use, though it will refine my arrow designs because I'll try and make arrows that are more perfect in their flight. But in the 1930s,
Yeah.
they had spark chronographs, I think, which they basically, someone shot an arrow against a background with vertical stripes, and it was done more or less in the dark, and a series of electrical sparks illuminated it at various points, and then they could measure how fast the arrow was going. And the other one they had was a ballistic pendulum kind of arrow speed thing. So when you released, an object was dropped, and where the arrow hit the object, they could then calculate back from the acceleration due to gravity and the distance away and everything to how fast the arrow was traveling. But that was really complicated, and nobody did that before. I mean, we talk about in Saracen archery, where in the dexterity test there are two ways of telling if your arrow is traveling fast enough. They didn't have a speed for it. They said if you could at I think it was 60 bow lengths or 65 bow lengths, if
Yeah.
your arrow would travel under a rope and hit a target on the ground at that distance, then your arrow is traveling fast enough. And Latham and Patterson calculated that would be about 180 feet per second, which is a good value. I've
Billy, do
actually
you remember in one of the manuscripts we worked on, Persian manuscripts, I think they also talked about in a distance how much dust, because they had prepared something like dust in a container, if I remember it correctly, it could cause. So if it hit the target, how much dust it made. Do you remember?
this was in shooting what the Turks would have called heki arrows, but in Persian were khaki.
Khaki. Ah, that's right. Khaki. That's right.
And they had a target at a distance of several hundred meters,
Yes.
and they had a layer of very fine dust on top of the target. At that distance, because the arrows, they weren't huge, you couldn't see the arrow hit the target.
Yes.
So therefore, when the arrow hit the target, the dust would puff up. Now, you're right. You could calculate if you had even just counting, you knew the exact distance. Just by counting the seconds, you could probably, well, you'd certainly be able to tell the differential speeds, how fast this arrow is compared to that arrow. And then you could say, oh, this is a better way to make an arrow or something like that. But yeah, but that's how people did things. We talk about spine on arrows, how much it deflects under a standard weight. In Korea, they just refer to the weight of the arrows because all the arrows are made out of the same kind of bamboo, and the heavier the bamboo is, the stiffer it is. So the weight of the arrow is directly related to the spine. If all your arrows are made out of reed, you can do the same thing. Or if all your arrows are made out of wood, you can do the same thing. Or you can have a different relationship. In Turkey, at least in the 19th century and probably a long time before, they measured the strength of a bow not by how many pounds it took to pull the bow back, but by how much the bow weighed in the hand.
Ah, okay, yeah. That's
because all the bows were so standard and uniform that a difference in weight meant different amount of materials. So the heavier the bow was mass-wise, weight in the hand, the heavier the bow actually was in the amount of strength you needed to pull it. This is all kinds of stuff that we don't think about because we've got modern measuring tools. And I mean, if you said this to an average archer in an archery club, they'd look at you as though you were crazy because, well, why wouldn't they do this? I've had people say this to me in forums on the internet. Why wouldn't they just go out and buy a such and such? And I said, because first of all, there was nowhere to buy these things. Secondly, they hadn't invented them yet. Because
it reminds me somehow some of those leading metallurgists who do crucible steel, pattern crucible steel. I worked with many of these metallurgists, and they measure all the elements, and then they said, okay, now let's sort of, I cannot say arrogance or hubris. I just say, I don't know, sometimes conceited. Oh, wow, we exactly know what those guys were doing, and they measured everything. I said, really? They say, yeah. Could you please create the same pattern from Safavid period if you can? Oh, really? You have a PhD from MIT or Harvard? Oh, that's great. Could you please replicate? Oh, wow. Let us see, please.
Look, the thing is, they've made so much progress in their studies that they think they know everything.
Yeah.
And look, honestly, sometimes I think, oh, I've finally cracked this thing of how you do this and how you do that. And then a week later, I see another example. Before we recorded, I was talking about arrow lengths and distance shooting and that. I've just thought of this now. In the last 2 weeks. And it might be right and it might be wrong. And I've got to set up a series of experiments to prove what my idea is. But I've had 40 years of archery before that occurred to me.
Yeah.
And experience with this particular type of issue. And I'm not saying I was wrong for 40 years, but there may be a whole different aspect of this I never thought of.
Yeah.
So I can't criticize people for being really confident because they've done something amazing. But on the other hand, it's probably not good practice to exclude everything else except for what you've worked out.
That's right. Okay, Bede, today the topic of our talk or presentation is about, we are going to go through a number of Persian miniatures from Shahnameh, from Khabaran Nameh. Okay, Shahnameh is about all heroes and kings. It's a mixture of history and legends, as we know. And Khabarname is about a book on heroic deeds of Hazrat Ali. So it's an in Persian imitation of Shahnameh, and this time Hazrat Ali or Ali takes over the role of Rostam. So it's very beautiful. Khabarname and Shahnameh to compare them.
Oh yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's got deep cultural connections too.
Yes,
I actually have
absolutely.
I have next to me, oh, my copy of the Shahnameh of Shah Tahmasp.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yes, very
And I mean,
beautiful.
this is the this was done by the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York,
Exactly. It's the
where
copy
they
in the Metropolitan, correct? Yes,
yeah.
that's right.
So it's not just the paintings from that Shahnameh in the Metropolitan. There's also paintings in other collections that were
Yes,
taken out of the book.
yes.
I was just looking at there's a Shahnameh from 1494 produced in northern Iran, Lahistan,
Nice, yes.
and if it's called the big head Shahnameh because in the paintings everybody's head is really quite well defined and they have big smiles with all their teeth showing and everything. It's really charming. I mean, you look at it and you think, oh, this is so sweet. But it's the whole Shahnameh, and apparently, I didn't know this. I was looking at a reference. It is the Shahnameh with the most number of illustrations.
Oh,
It's been broken up, and the other thing is they think
mm,
uh, it at one stage after it was made, it
mm.
belonged to Shah Ismail Safavi
Oh, oh,
when he was young. So his concepts of heroic behavior in that may have been from reading this and looking at the pictures.
beautiful.
And the pictures, one where I thought a guy was, and this is probably very roughly said, well, there's one guy, he's got this huge smile with a big mustache, and the other guy's got a smaller smile. But when you read the text, the guy with the biggest smile has just been shot and he's in intense pain. And it's not a smile, it's a grimace.
Oh, it's a
And
grimace.
the other guy has grabbed his reins and is leading him off the battlefield to take him to a doctor.
Oh,
And see, remember once I asked you to translate something on a painting where an old man is holding up an astrolabe, and
yes,
there's text there, and you translated it for me, and it was about how he was predicting the future. And this was a
yes.
big battle scene. Without that, the painting doesn't make sense.
No, no,
These
of course.
paintings were so integrated into the text, even when it wasn't totally obvious. There were these subtle connections with the text. And that particular painting, which I approached the National Museums of Scotland to get a
Mm,
high definition copy of it so I could study it.
mm,
It shows several things like drawing with left and right handed in the same painting.
mm,
Clearly, it's not a mistake. Clearly, one person is shooting right handed and the other person is shooting left-handed
mm,
because the other person's quiver and bow case are on the same side as the first person. So he's changed hands. And you can see he's a little bit
mm,
uncomfortable. But
mm,
if you project lines along the arrows,
mm,
they meet at the figure that's chasing them with the sword and the shield. So they're both
mm.
shooting at the same guy from different sides of their horses. And
Yeah.
this kind of um, awareness of actual
Mm,
tactical behavior is
yes.
really unusual with artists. It doesn't occur very often. And even if you see quite modern paintings and 19th century battle paintings from France and England and things like that, often they're very unrealistic. I mean, the details look very realistic, but the actual behavior isn't. Whereas this is a real um, battlefield behavior
Yeah.
being shown in this painting. That was 1549, I think, when it was painted. So even though the concepts of perspective are different and the concepts of chiaroscuro, light and shade, are different, the artists were sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes focused on quite technical features of what people were doing. And, maybe they didn't understand what was going on, but they had picked it up. There are a lot of things in the paintings that I find, if you thought to yourself, oh, well, this artist understands this, so therefore everything is going to be perfect. But when you look at them, you'll see people are shooting, or you'll see it from that side. So the hand is there, and the arrow is about that level on the other side of the hand. You can't see it. Now, we know that there's no way that anyone's balancing the arrow on their, like extending their ring finger and balancing the arrow there. They just haven't drawn it at the right level. It was a mistake. But nobody cared, because the people looking at it knew where the arrow would really be, and they just needed it to be roughly in the right place. They weren't. It's not a photograph, and it's not a manual for how to shoot, but it contains valuable pieces of information.
Yes. And another book we are going to also discuss is our paintings from Tarikh Jahangoshahi Nadiri, The World Conquest of Nadir Shah. And these are praised by many experts because they exactly depict arms and armor. They praised for the realistic depiction, which shows the military tactics and fights and battlefields. We are going to show them as well among some of these.
That'll be really good.
Yes, I'm going to start it, Pete. Okay. So let me go ahead. This is the first one. Do you see that, Pete?
Yeah.
Okay. Let us then look at this and tell. My suggestion, please let us first start with the archers who are on top of the fortification of castle.
Okay.
Please, let us look at, okay, some of them you can see that. For example, you can see that he's drawn this guy as well. Yeah. What kind of draw are they using?
Well, again, looking at it, it appears they're drawing to the bottom of the jaw.
So rishkesh.
Yeah. Okay. So it's lower than burkesh.
Yes.
But it's not as low as chest draw. So this is quite an effective draw to get a little bit of extra range, but not change your aiming or your shoulder positions too much.
Yes. And we found it. Because do you remember, we found reference to it because we know Sinekesh, chest draw, Borutkesh, which is mustache draw, and Sormekesh or Abrukesh, which is eyebrow draw. But then we found the fourth one. Do you remember? Rishkesh.
Yeah. Yeah.
So beard draw.
And it makes perfect sense, because when you look at some of these old things, they're actually talking about drawing along here. The shooting, see, in theory, if you're on top of a wall, you'd be shooting down. But these guys aren't. They're shooting at a slight downward angle, but they're trying to hit people further off from the wall. And this, I think, from the artistic point of view, the artist is trying to show that there's a bigger distance here than what they can fit into the painting. So they put all the guys there and they put all the guys there, but they're much closer together than the artist thinks they really are. And the way they show it is showing that these people are actually shooting there instead of there.
Yeah.
And see, it's probably wrong to think that sometimes these things are unsophisticated. They're not. The artist is thinking, but they're thinking of different things than what we as modern viewers would think of. And I think that could be that. It might be that they didn't want to do that because it doesn't look elegant. Because, one of the things in the manuscripts is the archer should have an elegant form when they shoot.
Yes, I remember.
And the reason is because it's balanced. And maybe this is the least unbalanced way they can show that. The people below are shooting up. The people above are shooting down. The angles are very close.
Yeah.
Like the upward angle and the downward angle kind of match. Yeah. And if you look at it, even the people down below are drawing to the jaw rather than to the face.
So they're
Ac-
all also using Rishikesh, correct?
Yeah, I
Beard.
would say all except right at the bottom, one of the guys shooting up is drawing here, Boratkesh.
This one.
Yeah, him. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, oh, yeah, I'm assuming. No, maybe no, he's not because it's so small. What I took to be the bottom of his nose actually was his lips.
Lips, yes.
So he's actually got a kind of chubby chin, and yeah, but see, that's really interesting because this artist wanted to show this to his way of thinking. This is an elegant and powerful way of shooting, and you
Yeah.
notice that. Pardon me.
Mhm.
I'm looking at the position of the arrowheads. These are all drawn right to the back of the bow.
Yeah.
There's no
Here.
arrows sticking in front.
Here.
Yeah, yeah, and the person above in the green.
Oh, even more.
Yeah,
The person above, even more.
and so when you see the grip appears to be like that, but that may be because I'm thinking of the person that's just shot. You can see his hand more clearly, but that
Yeah.
may be an exaggeration. It yeah. See, they're not very precise on the bow hand because they're showing the arrow almost under the thumb,
Yeah.
which it never is, because if you read the manuals, the thumb is like a bridge and it's always straight, and
Yeah.
except in Jangali Buzz where it's bent down.
Yeah.
So this is one of the things where they may have the positions right, and then they draw the arrow in afterwards,
Oh, yeah.
and so the arrow isn't necessarily precisely in the right place.
Take a look at the arrowheads, please. Do you see how
Yeah,
the arrowheads are depicted?
they look like what you'd call bilek, a little spade
Yeah.
arrowheads,
Yeah.
like somewhat like a broadhead like this.
Exactly. They look like that
Yeah,
somehow. Yeah.
a little bit smaller because they'd be more effective. I mean, if you're shooting a deer, you want to make a big cut. When you're shooting a man, you want to cut through his clothes and possibly a little bit of chainmail or something like that. There are arrowheads that have that general outline, but actually have quite a reinforced tip for punching through chainmail. The other thing that's interesting, you've got to take it that to some degree when they draw the drawing hand, they're exaggerating a couple of things. They're showing it twisted like that.
Yeah.
Now, what that's about is, and I'll try and show you with this arrow,
Mm-hmm.
is when you are getting ready to shoot, you move your hand, you open your hand a bit. You're not changing anything with the fingers or the thumb, but you're turning it at the wrist so that the side of the index finger is not pushing on the arrow anymore to get a cleaner release. And this is a thing that, look, it sounds really obvious. But if you're pressing against the side of the arrow, you're causing it to, depending on how much pressure you put, you're causing it to curve a little bit against the bow, which means when you release, it's going to slap the arrow pass on the bow, waste energy, wear down the arrow pass. It's just basically ineffective. So the artists here, whether intentionally or because they saw people do this, are showing that turn out of the wrist. And it's quite common in paintings in Iran, like Khorasan, even as far as Herat and places like that, to show that kind of. So you don't see this.
Mm-mm. No.
It's always flat and it's usually turned.
Yeah.
Now, when you're here, you're holding the arrow onto the bow. When you get back, you turn it, and this is a technical thing in shooting to improve the performance of the shooting. You'll notice that I'm just looking at the man in the blue kaftan,
Here,
shooting.
here.
Yeah. You notice that the bow and the bowstring
Hmm.
don't match. So they've drawn the bow and then try to work out where to put the bowstring. And it doesn't actually attach to the right parts of the bow because the person, so these often you had the master and his apprentices, and the master did the difficult parts, and maybe the apprentices did the arrows or the bowstrings. That bowstring is right out of position, but the bow is in the right position. So if the string was coming down to his hand from there, the bow would be too deep and the bowstring would be too shallow. And this happens in modern. You go and have a look at an illustration nowadays of somebody reconstructing armor or something like that with a bowman. Half the time, the proportions of the bow are completely out. It's a problem with art. It's not a problem with painters, 300 or 400 years ago. It's a problem right now.
Yeah.
And you can see people making these geometrically impossible things because, I mean, my guess is that there's no way you can reconcile that to a real object, but they know the shape of the bow at full draw.
Yeah.
What's different is they've drawn the bow so you're right back here.
Yeah.
But they want the guy to be drawn here, so they just draw a shortened string in. This is what I would call one of the pitfalls of using these old paintings, whether they're Persian or Turkish or European, and assuming because one thing is right or two things are right, that everything is right. There are what we would call mistakes, but what they would call things that are irrelevant. Showing the bow shaped like that is saying this guy is at full draw and he's really powerful. They're not trying to give you an engineering diagram of how the bow looks in real life.
Mm-hmm.
The people who paid for these paintings, paid for these books, would read this as saying full draw, guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Where the string is in that, well, it'd be nice if it was perfect, but the world's not perfect.
Yeah.
I think that's it. We'll probably see it later in other paintings.
Yes.
That there are these little disproportions. They're not significantly damaging to understand what's going on.
But look at this, please. Look at the warrior on top. Here
Yeah.
is really
This is
borrowed cash.
This is almost perfect, showing you what's really going on. He's leaning forward to get his shoulder in the right position.
Yeah.
He's drawing past here. It's even though he's wearing a male aventail on his helmet, he's drawing right back to his ear.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit further.
And look at this. He has borrowed cash. He as well. Okay, he released, but look at him. Oh, he passed. He drawn past. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would say, but I think he's down here.
So he is down here. Yeah.
Most are here, but one guy's down there.
Yeah. So he's reached cash.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but this is a really interesting painting, because again, I think this is in that the template for this painting comes from the Lahistan paintings. It's beautifully engaged. If I remember correctly, it may not be this painting, but one very similar to it, that the people on one side have fletching that is symmetrically curved, and on the other side have fletching that is more parabolic. And when you see the arrows on the ground, the ones going this way are one type, the ones going that way are another type, showing that from the point of view of the artist and possibly his patrons, this was saying something about the distinction between the two sides. One side used one type of fletching, the other side used a different type. This is a really interesting painting because, as you pointed out, it's even the proportions of the bows, the draw. This is much better than the other one in terms of that particular feature. Not anything else. I mean, they're all different paintings, and they have different things. To me, the horse gear is very timid. The quivers are like late timid quivers. The leopard tails are no longer wrapped around the arrows; they're just decorative.
Yeah.
So that and also they're starting. It's hard to tell. I'm just looking at the heels. They're starting to get heels on their boots, which is that happened round about the 1380s, 1390s. They start to show heels, which were probably invented round about that period. And also, there's a whole linked group of technologies. The stirrups change a bit, and all kinds of things.
Look at this, please. The next one. This guy, look at him, and here is really borrowed cash. You see that?
Yeah. What he's done, if you imagine he's like this and then gone leant forward, so that the arrow is now, it starts here, but it goes up there past his nose. Yeah. And see how he's almost laying on the neck of his horse?
Yeah.
This is leaning forward to shoot. The other guy further up, I was thinking the other guy in yellow right at the top there.
Oh, there, this guy, yeah.
Yeah. See, he's more upright and his arrow is more even.
Yeah.
This is a dynamic pose. He might actually be leaning around his horse's neck to shoot there. And that's changed. I mean, his anchor point is the same. He starts off with the same position, but he's physically in a different angle than that, which to me, again, shows an awareness. This might be, and I really don't know, this might be a common thing for this artist or this school of painters to give that dynamic feeling of the battle, because people really would do this. I mean, there's other things that you look at and you can say, well, I'm just I look at things like, are there horseshoes? Are there little nails in the hoofs of the horse? The other one, yes. This one, no.
Yeah.
But you can't really see what the bit on the horse's mouth is like. But this, to me, looks more nomadic.
Yeah.
But again, it looks like he might have a heel on his boot.
Yeah.
Which is it's as I say, there's lots of stuff. The quiver is a development. This is anywhere from the 1390s to the 1490s. Quivers of this shape. They don't have a pocket. They're a little bit longer. They cover maybe 2/3 of the arrow instead of half the arrow.
Yeah.
They don't show that density of arrows in the quiver that you see later. Possibly because they've made the arrows. They've worked out how to make them more slender and still strong. But it could be just because they're showing people with a tribal background where they made the arrows heavier and bigger because that was more robust in their everyday life.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. There's so many undertones to this.
You go to the next.
Yep.
This is fascinating, right? We discussed it before I started to record.
Yeah. This is one of the most interesting depictions of a crossbow I've ever seen in a Persian miniature. I had never seen this until tonight when you showed it to me.
Yeah.
And
Kaman Zamburak, right?
Yeah. I mean, what it's showing, I mean, the draw length is about this. A European crossbow is about this.
Yeah.
The bow is clearly composite. It doesn't have the long trigger of a European crossbow. It appears to maybe have a little shorter trigger.
Yeah.
He's holding it like this.
Yeah, he is.
Actually, look how low he's holding the base. This is maybe to get range.
Yeah.
See, with European crossbows with their long stocks, which often
Yeah.
sat on the shoulder, if you wanted to shoot long distance, you had a lot of problems because when you're holding it like that, the crossbow stock
Yeah.
is between your face and the target. You can't see the target anymore. This, he's lowered the base and he can see over the arrowhead at the target. So again, it appears there's a little stirrup hanging in front of the crossbow on a hinge, which is quite a normal thing.
Mhm.
He looks quite calm about all of this.
Yes, he does. Very calm.
But bear in mind, the only other crossbow in a Persian miniature I saw was from the Zafarnamar of the Siege of Smyrna.
Yeah.
And that was almost like a drawing of a European crossbow stock with a Persian bow on it.
Yeah.
And clearly, we all knew it was a crossbow and everything. But this seems...
Possibly for a reconstruction of a Persian crossbow, this one is even better.
Oh, I think so. I think this is a much better thing. We can work out the trigger mechanism quite easily because I'm pretty certain it has, how can I say, echoes of Ming Dynasty crossbows in China. It's not the same. In fact, the stock is entirely different, but maybe they've got that little trigger mechanism, which is more like a trigger and less like a lever. But yeah, we know that crossbows were used all across Iran, Afghanistan, into North India, because there are, but particularly in Mughal India, there are a lot of illustrations of crossbows. Yes. And they're more like this. They're not like the European style. Or the Mamluks. Mamluks have crossbows, which are like the European style, very long stocks. Though the draw is long, like in this, not like in the European ones with the very short draws.
Yes. Look at these guys who are trying to shoot at a crossbow man, horse riders. Look at the draw they're using. This is like a borrowed cache, correct? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a borrowed cache, but a short version. They're not drawing to the ear because they're shooting at such a high angle that it's hard to get your... if you completely rotate at the waist to do that, but if you're in a hurry and on horseback and galloping past a wall where people are shooting at you, I think using a shorter arrow and a shorter draw might be a solution.
When I was looking at the whole miniature, I was really thinking to myself, look, we have here 1, 2, 3. I don't know what this guy is doing, but at least 3 who are aiming to shoot with the bow. And this guy alone is sitting on top of the wall, a calm face, prepared with this crossbow, as if saying, hey guys, there is nothing you can do. 3 bows against my crossbow.
Well, see, he can hide. The Merlins, the upright parts of they're comically small on this because for artistic reasons, but in reality, the ones say in BAM, where they're still existing, they're quite large and very tall, and often have arrow slits in them. So he'd be able to duck behind protection without any trouble at all.
Yeah, exactly. That's
and of course, all the manuals talk about that inner calmness when you're shooting.
Yeah, that's true.
Because without that calm, these guys are pretty calm, but look, I'm just trying to think about the difficulties of this. You cannot ride straight up to a wall and shoot. You've got to shoot and then turn around before your horse runs into the wall.
Yeah.
And if there's a group of people doing that, you've all got to turn in the same direction, otherwise you'll run into each other. This looks pretty random, and we're just shooting. This has to be really carefully organized.
Yes.
You do more damage to yourself than you do to your enemy. The guy in the crossbow.
Yes, here we can take a look at them closely, right?
Yeah.
And look at the arrowhead, Bede. You see?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Are
Look.
these butt pie? Duck
Yeah.
foot?
Look.
Yeah, which is not suggesting that they're really worried about the other guy's armor very much. This is a tearing, big wound arrowhead.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
though again, you can make them really strong, but it's pretty fearsome. And the people looking at this painting at the time would notice that,
Yeah.
and it maybe in their minds it says these guys are really serious about killing somebody. And they mightn't say, oh, well, you'd really use an XYZ arrowhead. Because remember, in the Hidayatarami, they've
Yeah.
got paintings of arrows with arrowheads talking about the different, in Persian, next to them, there are descriptions of this arrow has got a cylindrical arrowhead with this and that. So they're very much aware of the technical advantages of different shapes of arrowheads. It's not a thing that it's not like in the Yoshitsune Monogatari, the Japanese novel from the 1400s, where they actually describe every arrowhead on every arrow when they shoot somebody, because that was just what they liked talking about. Though I must admit, the translations of the Shahnameh that I've read do suggest that in Iran, it was weapons, the types of weapons and things were actually quite important to the people involved.
That's true.
It's like, in the Iliad and things like that. They talk about the weapons that the heroes are using with a bit of detail, what
Yeah.
kind of armor and things.
This is from Tarikh Jahangoshay Naderi. These are paintings. These are not small miniatures. They are bigger ones. They're called, at least in Persian, paintings, but like a miniature painting. But one thing, they are really praise for the realistic depictions. So in the male armor, sometimes khaftan, different types of things. Sometimes bazuban, sometimes not. But it's so funny when I look at it. There are like 4 cannons shoot, or at least 2 are shooting, 2 are, I don't know what's going on. They're not there preparing them. But then this guy on his horseback is shooting his bow.
And he's not moving. He's stopped his horse there, and he thinks, oh, he's
exactly.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
It's well, it just shows that the horse archers are opportunistic. If there's a shot, they're going to take it.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for the poor guy laying on the ground there. He looks very unhappy.
This guy, yeah. I mean, actually, the paintings here, when you look at the whole of them, oh God, these very, very brutal depictions of injuries and dead bodies. So it is also something like that. I mean, I just try to, restrict it.
No, I agree. We don't need to kind of glorify the goriness of it.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
interesting. The cannons are very well depicted too.
Which ones?
The cannons.
Yes, very well.
Very well
examples of that we have in the military museum. I show it in my books, in my firearms book. Examples are there from Nader Shah period in different Iranian museums. Very well depicted.
Yeah, Nader Shah was a very interesting person in terms of he was militarily really advanced for his time.
Yes, he was.
And I've seen historians writing about European historians writing about him, saying that he would have been a serious contender in a war in Europe.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I think not only Iranians, but mostly Iranians, but also non-Iranians call him Napoleon of Iran. And once, I have to say this, I have an anecdote. I don't know if he said it half jokingly or he meant it. Once an English historian told me, a colleague, I don't understand. Why do you guys call it in Persian Iranian Napoleon? Why don't you call him Iranian Wellington? And I just said, well, no comments on
that. Well, I see his point, because Napoleon lost in the end. Nader Shah was murdered in the end, but he didn't lose battles.
Yeah.
I can see the thing. But of course, to an Englishman, Wellington won Waterloo, but if you're Prussian, it wasn't Wellington.
Exactly. I fully agree. It was him. It was him. Thank you very much. It was Manouchehr. It was not this guy.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they work together. It's a perfect example that teamwork is better than individuals. And
Yeah.
Wellington himself, I
Had he
think.
not come, Wellington would have not made it. I fully agree.
Oh yeah, things weren't going well towards the end there. But
Yeah.
again, it's this thing. It's not one person usually. I mean, Nadia Shah was serious. I've read a bit about him, and he was seriously well organized in a military sense at the period.
Yeah.
And it was really quite surprising because nobody else in the Middle East really went that way.
Yeah.
And after him, things kind of declined again
Yeah.
because obviously the sheer level of taxation to maintain armies like this must. I mean, he was bringing huge amounts of plunder into Iran, but I mean that wasn't being spread out among the population. The Riyadhs and whatever was still paying really high taxes to fund this army. So I'm
Yeah.
sure they were very happy when he died.
Yes.
Though things didn't get a hell of a lot better.
Yeah. He had always a standing army. Oh God, one campaign after the other. Of course,
Yeah.
that's true. And now we go to the next one, please. Okay, Pete, what do we see as far as draw is concerned, please? The drawing
Okay.
is concerned.
Well, these are those two draws we were talking about before,
Mhm.
Rishikesh and Urkesh, which are very equivalent to each other. You'll notice that the at the bow hand level, whereas the grip is shown precisely, the arrow is random. It's not at the right level, and it's not necessarily on the right side. In the person on the right, it appears that the arrow goes there, then through the bow and out his hand. This is just drafting errors. They're not trying to show you anything. They are trying to show you something where the draw hand is, and they are trying to show you something how the bow is being held. But the painting of the arrow is a little bit wobbly. This is where when people are really, really pedantic about arrow position and things like that, it's wrong to try and make everything fit. You could say, "Oh, you're just picking the bits that you like," and my answer to that is, I'm picking the bits that, from my reading and my experience, if I was a person paying for one of these books, these are the things I would notice. I wouldn't particularly worry about the position of the arrow. I would notice that they're all holding their reins, using a loop on the reins to be able to get to full draw. Because remember, you're riding your horse, you shoot the arrow.
Yeah.
What happens next is your hand goes back. So if the reins are really tightly held, you pull that's pulling the horse's mouth, which tells it to slow down. And that's not what you want to happen. So you want that to be so loose that moving your hand backwards and forwards makes no difference to the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the horse doesn't feel it, but in general speaking, the horse is taking two sources of command, which is what your legs are doing and what your hands are doing. And one by themselves probably isn't enough to tell the horse to change. It's
Just
also interesting.
go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the horses wearing a bangle on its foot. Now, these are real things.
This one, right? Hold on.
Yeah.
This one.
These are real things. In the horse mastership, it's more apparent in the person above him, where it's got two things on each, one on each.
Here, yeah.
These are to protect the foot. They're not armor so much as just guards. Like, they were often just made out of leather, and they're just to protect the horse's feet. Some horses, when their hind legs come forward in the gallop and the forelegs go back, they hit themselves with their own feet. which can cause injury and lameness. And this was one of the ways that people dealt with it. I mean, there's a lot of interesting things in this. For instance, there is it's really hard to understand what's going on here. There's so much stuff on that horse's head, both horses. If you look carefully, there's a strap that goes up under the breast strap and under the throat latch, and that goes to the ring of the ring bit. Yeah. But they haven't actually drawn that kind of bit there. Then there's another strap that is got little flowers on it that is going from the bit over the horse's neck, but it's quite high up. It's not a rein. That's really complicated, and I'm not 100% sure about what's going on. As is usual, sometimes a line is erased, so the line between the bridle and the bit is erased because the paint has flaked off or something, or the artist never got around to finishing it. But yeah,
take a look at this. We wrote about these discs, char aine with the roundish discs, an article for a Spanish journal. Do you remember?
Yes, I remember. Yeah. So sometimes there's one in the front and one in the back, and sometimes there's one in the front and one a bit lower down, covering the kidneys on the side. Right. So you have 4 chahaina.
And what I really like is, as you know, in Iranian museums, we have these royal collection. Some of these bazu bands are connected to each other via male rings, and some of them with hinges. Look at this now.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I got a pair of 20th century bazu band from India, which came with a charina and a helmet, and the helmet had old riveted mail on it. The charina and the bazu bands were completely modern, right? And they had little brass katars riveted onto them.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that the bazu bands had a hinge on one side, and when you closed it, there was a long wire that slid through a hinge.
And even antiques I handled have that wire.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a really solid way of making it, and it's quite effective. I never saw the wire fall out because the wire goes from the top in, and it's not. If the bazu band tries to open, the wire flexes a little bit, so it won't slide out. You've got to actually pull it out. The ones I have had a little loop on it. Another thing that I've noticed, the person on the left. Can you see? He's probably got a Bekter or something like that under his kaftan. Can you see the little? And I think that's metal plates.
This one?
Yeah.
Yeah, he does.
I think that's a Bekter. It's
for our European, or people who do HEMA and this guys, these guys have mostly armor. They're not wearing some like evening clothes, right?
Yeah, well,
that's why many European, in HEMA, they don't oversee this fact. Excuse me, a bit. I'm just stressing again. They're having armor, different types of armor. It's not that they're just wearing some clothes, right? Excuse me. Go ahead, please. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't uncommon to have males sewn into a kaftan.
Exactly.
I mean, that was normal, and I think it might be. I mean, I know it was normal back in the 1100s because Osama ibn Munqidh talks about having 2 shirts of males sewn inside a coat, and it was deliberately to look as though there was no armor there, so people would make a mistake and think you weren't armored. Actually, I'm curious. Again, the man on the left has stripes going around his sleeves, yet his undergarment isn't that color. There's nothing sticking down that color. Whereas the guy on the right has the blue and gold undergarment, and you can see it below his little red jacket. So I'm wondering, is that meant to also indicate some kind of armor?
Yeah, surely. Surely. It's indicating some kind of armor. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, generally speaking, when you see patterns of flowers or whatever on a coat like that, it means it's some kind of brigandine.
Yes,
But it
I've
can
seen.
sometimes just be male, and the decorative flowers and that are sewn onto it, and they hold the male in place underneath the coat. I've
Absolutely.
seen. I I shouldn't say this. I once had the opportunity when I was very thin and young of trying on a 17th or 18th century Ganga Jamni um, male shirt, and it was where they have the steel colored and gold washed rings to
Yes,
make patterns,
yes, yes.
and at the time it fitted me, and it was completely lined with cloth. On the
Mm.
outside, you saw the beautiful patterns in the steel.
Yeah,
On the inside, it was lined with first heavy cloth that the male was sewn to,
yeah,
then felt padding, and then silk. Then that was what you wore against your clothes.
yeah.
And it had decorative borders with solid gold rivets in patterns. Uh, we did a calculation. This was a 3/4 length coat with 3/4 length sleeves,
Yes.
and the rings were so tiny that we worked out the number of rings per square inch, and then worked out the how many square feet of mail was there. 120,000 rings in
Oh,
this.
that's amazing.
It wasn't really meant for fighting because they were butted; they weren't riveted.
Oh, they were
But
butted. Okay.
yeah, so I had an opportunity to buy it, and I looked at it, and I couldn't. I could see that the rings along the shoulders from being put in a frame and displayed was starting to open from the weight of the rest of the armor, and
Uh,
I thought, how the only way to display it is to display it flat, and I had nowhere to display it, and you couldn't store it any other way than flat, otherwise it would deteriorate.
where is it now?
I do not know. The man that was selling it used to buy from one of my friends. So a lot of stuff came into Australia, went through one of my friends, and other antique dealers then ended up with them and sold them. The other thing, he had two other things that he offered for sale to me.
Mm.
One was a single bazu band with spiral fluting on it and
Oh,
gold
that's
in,
beautiful. Yeah.
and I was really tempted by that, but I was too stupid and too young to know how rare it was.
It's really
And the
rare.
other one was an Afghan pullover with interrupted fullering,
Yeah.
and then red pigment put into the fullers. And it was the most beautiful sword. I mean, the sword, the grip was beautiful too, but the sword blade was so beautiful. And
Wow.
again, I was 23, 24 or something. I had no idea how rare these things were. You go through life. Same thing with the kind of 17th or 18th century Shamshi.
Yeah, I
And I
mean,
thought,
it
yeah,
reminds me. It reminds me, those old pictures and some old films where you see that when American troops, actually, it's very sad. We shouldn't be, because Japanese really take it seriously. But there are
mhm,
some pictures, those American, soldiers and sailors sitting on those American warships, and they're peeling like potatoes with tanto, and those tantos are
yeah,
heirloom. They're just like Japanese heirloom, and they're peeling. I have these pictures in somewhere in one of my files.
yeah.
It is unbelievable. Peeling with imperial tantos some potatoes in the kitchen.
Mm,
Unbelievable. God.
yeah, there's some shocking stuff. I've got a. I'll have to. We'll have to do a thing on knives one day, and I'll show you some knives that I've got. I've got a very hard steel knife,
Mm,
um, with its original scabbard, and it had a steel cylindrical handle, which I've
mm,
never seen,
mm.
which is kind of like welded to the blade, and it had a straight edge, and the back was quite thick, and then it curved down to the edge. And I
Yes.
think it was either for preparing food, or it may have been a razor for shaving because it had incredibly hard steel. It was razor sharp when I got it. And you kind of we see fighting knives and I mean cards can be both.
Yes, both.
Cards have you can have a reinforced tip and it's for fighting.
Yes.
But it can also be a general purpose knife because it's a really good design for a knife.
Yes, it is.
Not so much pish cubs or khanjar.
No, imagine using pish cubs or khanjar in the kitchen. Not a good idea.
Oh, no, look, no. I can tell you a funny story. A friend of mine had a miniature pish cubs made in Lahore or somewhere with, you know how they did the inlay of shell and stuff?
Yep.
And it had this T-section curved blade.
Yep.
And it was the best knife for cutting bread I've ever seen.
Oh,
because it was so sharp, it would go in and then the T-section would just split the bread apart. It was not designed for that, but if you're desperate, you could make anything work.
That's true. The next miniature, hold on. Okay, yeah, let's go down. It's from the same painting, same mini. And look at this bead. What do we see here again? Oh, the disc again here. And look at the draw. You see?
But this is a really important one because it shows something really special. And that is that the archer on the right is shooting left-handed. And he's a right-handed archer because his quiver is on his right-handed side.
Yes.
And he's shooting that way, even though the use of perspective isn't part of the painting style. This shows that he is to the left of the archer following him, who is shooting.
Yeah.
And this is kind of a way of indicating this ability to shoot both styles. So technically, if you wanted to shoot all the way around there, no, you can't. The only way to shoot back that way is to change hands.
Change hands, absolutely.
And when you're in this position, you may not be that far ahead of your pursuer. He may be only 20 or 30 meters away. And if you've practiced, you'll hit him. I mean, you might not be able to do it 100 times, but you can do it that one time when it's going to save your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the same thing, it's possibly the warrior on the left side, the mounted warrior is wearing some type of brigandine. Remember, look at this, Pete.
Yeah.
This is clear. Look at this.
Yeah, you can definitely see. Yeah, but also, even under that, it looks as though there's another metal, like Bektash type armor.
Exactly, here.
So he's double armored, which is mentioned in the text quite a bit, here. Actually.
Look at this one, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Pete, do you see these, like these lines? Do you see that? They go parallel, and then here parallel. Can you follow the mouse, the arrow?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're showing.
Yeah, exactly. This. That's
right. But there's even more interesting things armor-wise in this painting.
Yeah,
the man in the green, the dark leggings are quite. That's originally silver paint that's oxidized usually.
Yeah.
So he was probably wearing male leggings, and notice he's got. It looks like they're tied around his boots at the bottom, so it goes all the way down his shin.
Yeah.
So you see those little white ties?
Yeah.
I think that he's wearing black boots.
Yeah.
And see, the shade of the black is different from the shade of the legging.
Yeah.
So one is because it's a black paint, and the other one is because it's silver that's gone oxidized. Yeah. The man on the other side, you see the big knee pad thing?
Yeah. Yes.
You remember those armored thighs that have a knee pad and like a little...
This is Zanu band. This is clearly Zanu band in Persian.
Yeah. But it looks like it's sewn into his pants.
Yeah.
Rather than being a separate piece.
Yes.
And And again, he's wearing black boots, small heel. It's classic. It's really quite interesting. And of course, he's got a disc on his chest and clear armor underneath. Yeah. But in both cases, I would say that he's probably also wearing a brigandine.
Yes, you can see it here. Armor. Look at these nails. They look like nails. These are indication of that. Exactly. And then again, here, as you mentioned, look.
Yep.
The same as we see here, but on top of it, he's wearing an extra protection in the shape of a disc. That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, to a person 50 meters away, he'd look as though he's just wearing clothes. And the fact that maybe the rivet heads would sparkle wouldn't matter, because it's not unusual to have little pieces of gold sewn onto your clothes anyway. This is a kind. Are they making the brigandines to look like normal clothes, or are they making normal clothes to look a bit like brigandines because they like the effect, because it looks pretty? What came first, the chicken or the egg?
That's right.
You notice you can see horseshoe nails in the horse's hooves as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's right.
This one. I noticed in Persian painting, if there are, bear in mind you can only see one side of the hoof, so you can see half the nails. If there are 2 nails visible, which means 4 altogether, it's a mule or a donkey. And if there are 3 visible, meaning 6 altogether, it's a horse. It's a kind of code. I mean, normally the ears give it away. Small ears, horse, big ears, mule. But it's a secondary way of identifying the kind of animal somebody is riding.
Look at this one. Beautiful. I really like this one.
Oh yeah, that's lovely.
Look at the quiver. I really like this quiver. How many arrows he has in there? And look at the nocks. Everything is depicted, painted. Look at this meticulously. Right?
Yeah, this is a kind of classic way of doing it. If you look a bit further down, the horse of the guy next to him is wearing a chamfron.
Yes.
But look at the expression in its eyes.
The horse doesn't want to be there.
That's the one thing I love about Persian miniatures, is that the horses have expressions.
Yeah, they do.
They're real characters. They're participants. But see, he is drawing down there, so he's getting to his ear.
Yeah.
He's got his hand turned right round. They tend to show it more like that, which is more artistic than accurate. But the fact that it's turned down shows that he's doing that to take pressure off the knock. When he releases, he goes back. He would go back like that. But the layout of his shoulders too. His elbow is kind of tilted up a little bit. Well, the forearm is tilted up a little bit. But the shoulders are completely aligned.
Yes. I think both of them are using borrowed cash, correct?
Yeah, I think so. In the man on the right, it looks higher, but I think it's meant to be coming back to the base of the ear there.
Yeah.
It's that he's looking down.
Yeah, and he's looking down.
Sometimes if you look at people like Justin Marr demonstrating shooting very heavy bows in the Gaoying method, you often you kind of get the shoulders turned like that to get that really heavy bow, forcing the shoulder into the right position for the greatest strength. And it's hard to say. Bear in mind, there are people who actually draw. You see it on the internet all the time, people drawing to their cheek. Now, sometimes that's because shoulder injuries, because they can't get their shoulders into the right place, and that's the most efficient way for them to shoot.
Yeah.
It's certainly better than Abrakesh, because, again, as all the old authors say, it's blind. And
look at this again. Bede. This should also be brigandine. Look, type of
Oh,
brigandine.
yeah, I think so. I think so.
Look at this. Mm,
Mm.
yeah.
I think they're both wearing brigandine.
And he
It's
also look at this.
Oh, yeah, yeah. He's got definitely armored legs on, mail and little plates or something like that, probably.
Yeah,
And again, that color change
yeah,
from the silver. This is why the arrowheads are often black. It's not
yeah,
black and steel. It's they were painted with silver paint to look like shiny steel, and
yeah.
then give it 400 years or 300 years or 200 years, and it goes black. They had a
Okay,
problem. Go on.
Beat. Look at this. I think this one you will like it, right? Because
Yeah.
he's going to draw, right? And he is now pulling an arrow from his quiver, right? That's also beautiful. Again
That's
here, again here, we see the disc. You see, and again,
yeah.
this, you see that? Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, the disc and the plates down the undercoat.
Yeah,
Though, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's possible that for decorative effect, the brigandine is stripped there, and maybe those plates are actually attached directly to the coat, and that's the overlap of the coat.
yeah,
But I don't know, and I mean, it's a painting after all; it's not a photograph. The other thing that I find really interesting, looking at it, he's drawing like what we would he's drawing like that. So he's holding the arrow in the middle, pulling it
yeah,
out of the quiver, which is the fastest way to draw. A lot of Persian miniatures show the person holding the nock of the arrow and drawing it out of the quiver,
yeah.
which I can do, but it was a lot easier when I was skinny and I could twist around a lot more. um, it's technically it's not that difficult, but you do have to practice that flexibility.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
And
it's not natural
Beat,
for you.
you're talking about the horses. This horse went to the dentist regularly, but
Yeah.
this horse, look at the teeth.
Uh, actually, they've got very similar. They've painted the open mouth very similar, but that horse looks the horse in red looks very unhappy.
Yeah,
Whereas the other one looks
I
a
mean,
bit excited.
the horse is missing some teeth, but
Yeah,
this horse not. He has like a perfect Colgate smile, which is used
yes,
in the United States of America. But
yeah,
this guy possibly didn't have dental care. He didn't take it seriously. Look at this.
yeah. Oh, it's so it
Really
is so.
nice.
And again, look at the chamfrons are so pretty.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, obviously there's lots of different shapes for them. Actually, do you notice on the other side, the horse at the top is wearing a little hat with his ears coming out?
Yeah.
This
Oh
was a
yeah,
thing.
this one, this one.
Yeah, yeah. This was a
Yeah,
thing people used to do. Because the problem that horses have sometimes is flies biting them on the ears and that. And even though the ears stick out, they can still flick their ears, but there's not a good place for the fly to land.
yeah,
And it's a bit distracting to the fly. I mean, there is some argument that the big tassels under the horse's neck were also originally meant to, as the horse is moving, they're brushing flies away.
Ah, okay, okay.
So, but later on, they're purely decorative and they're a symbol of rank and things like that. The man that's drawing that's knocked his arrows, getting ready to draw.
This one.
Again, he's well. See, again, we've got people shooting left and right-handed in the same picture.
Yeah,
He is holding the bow in his right hand, drawing with his left. And that again is to shoot. He's actually he's doing this.
yeah.
Which is not efficient unless he's going to turn that way and shoot that way.
Mm.
It's hard to work out why he's doing it that way, but maybe, looking at the picture over, a couple of days, just thinking about where everybody is and that. Because the artist, obviously, when you paint a picture, everybody is where you put them. Nobody is there because they're there. The artist chooses where each figure goes, sometimes well and sometimes not.
Yeah.
It's interesting that the lower left figure is using Rishkesh.
Yeah, that's Rishikesh. This one.
Yeah. And he kind of looks like he's looking off into the distance. You notice he's also pulled the arrow point almost inside the bow. So
You
maybe they're
know,
trying.
I was wondering if this guy is like a Scarface. Look at it.
Well, it's hard to tell because that could be just deterioration in the paper. So
Yeah,
remember that there may be writing on the back of that, and the ink may have started to eat through the
yeah,
paper. The the thing
absolutely.
that the thing that that lower figure is.
Hmm. This one. Go ahead,
Yeah,
please
yeah.
speak. Hmm.
So we're talking about the man on the left, the lower archer. It appears, and maybe it's wishful thinking on my part, but it looks to me like he's Chung Ali Buzz, and he's drawn the arrowhead in between his thumb and his index finger,
Yeah,
like that,
yeah,
which gives you the longest possible draw with a broadhead,
yeah,
but without being injurious.
yeah,
Uh, and when you think he's doing Rishkesh to get longer range,
yeah,
this is the artist is trying to evoke feelings in the viewer, or this is just a standard thing that they did. It's
yeah,
pretty hard to tell. We have writings of people writing about archers Persian um manuscripts about artists and what
mm,
people thought of their painting, and that there was, this was a fairly sophisticated thing.
mm,
So we have some idea that people thought some artists were better at
yeah,
depicting battles or
yeah.
whatever, and this really, to me, it's quite, I don't know, it's
Look
very
at this one,
evocative.
please. These bows look really short.
Yeah. This is a thing. The what Kaplowitz calls the Kassan eye, the part of the bow just after the ridge section where it's
Yeah.
in the bending, if that's made a little bit thinner, which he was of the opinion was often done with war bows and Persian bows,
Okay.
it enables the bow to stretch right out like that. So quite a short bow gets a much longer draw.
Uh, this
And
part, right? This part.
yeah, just past that, further towards the handle a little bit. Um,
This part.
but yeah, that's about halfway down,
Yeah.
because these aren't drawn with the ridges visible or anything. This is a fairly simplified drawing. Um, and the archer in front on the left,
Yeah.
it's so exaggerated that the tips of the bow have gone past 90 degrees, which physically on a 100-pound bow, you'd be a real strong man if you could manage that. I think that's a bit of artistic license. Whereas the archer at the back in the yellow, the angle of the string to the tip is much more realistic, and the archer in the middle too is much more realistic. I think the archer in front in the green, they've got a bit carried away. Also, Charina again,
Yeah.
except octagonal or hexagonal shaped plates.
Yeah.
And
And look
we've
at
got,
this. This guy is Borut Kesh. These
yeah,
two are Sine Kesh.
yeah, yeah, they're actually drawing to the chest,
Yeah. And
which, go on.
and look at this guy. Look at the eyeballs.
Yeah.
He's looking at him right in front.
Do we shoot together? Do we shoot now?
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
getting tired. Don't do this for too long. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. They've the man at the back has the wrist turned down on the bow hand.
Yeah.
The man in the middle has it more balanced.
Yeah.
And the man in front has it more turned up. It's
Yeah.
almost like they're illustrating different ways of holding the bow.
Yeah. That's
It might
right.
have been just a little thing that the artist did because it interested him.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's quite, again, you're looking at this saying, how much did they put in here to keep the interest of their patrons, to make, because the people that were paying for this were often professional warriors in the
Yes, they
sense
were.
that they were generals, amirs,
Yes,
and
they
whatever,
were. Absolutely.
or kings, shahs, and sultans, and
Yeah.
things like that. They
Yeah.
weren't everyday people could not buy one of these. They're too
Of
expensive,
course. No, of course not.
and no printing presses, so you didn't get an opportunity to look at them any other way.
Look at
Um,
this one. Again, Borutkesh, right?
yeah. Oops.
And look at this guy, Sinekesh, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Killing a dragon. Look how many arrows they placed. Like, if you look at the whole painting here, oh god, dragon has like 100 arrows in it.
Well, there's, I think, I'm not sure. It might be an Arab archery. When they're hunting lions, they don't just shoot them with one arrow and watch them lay down and die. They shoot as many arrows as they can because their experience with leopards and lions hunting them was you shoot them and the arrows kill them, but the lion's not dead yet. And it lies there pretending to be dead until you come close and then jumps on you. And you're dead then, so you both die, but the lion got you. So they used to shoot lots of arrows into things like lions, and bear in mind, up in the Caspian Sea area, they had tigers as well to fight with.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, so I don't think it's an extreme thing to shoot lots and lots of arrows into a dragon. I think that's quite sensible.
Yes. And this one on the left side and on the right side, this is really fascinating. I also like this one. And look, this one, we have seen that the normally other miniatures normally, say, they were using the left hand to shoot, but on this war scene, battle scene, they are using all the right hand. Do you see that? Also on the right side.
No. Sorry, the ones on the right hand side are all shooting, holding with the left hand and pulling with the right hand.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. No, I mean, in contrast, look at this, please. I just want to say, in contrast, like this, you see that? Mm-hmm. They're all holding in the same position. That's what I wanted to say.
Look
at this. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Whereas the other one, the one you showed in between, this one. Now, what's important about this one is that's totally symmetrical. All the people on the left are shooting right-handed, holding the bow with the left hand. All the people on the right are shooting left-handed, holding the bow with the right hand. This one is realistic. That other one was a composition and they didn't care whether they were right or left-handed. Here, they're really worried that you see them shooting, correctly. And most of the other ones too, even when they showed left and right-handed, there was a reason why someone was shooting left-handed instead of right-handed.
Because they used both hands.
It was just symmetry. We'll have right-handed archers on the left and left-handed archers on the right because it makes a better picture. Because nobody's going to learn weapon skills from shooting dragons because you can't find the dragons to practice on.
Yes. And look at this, Sinekesh.
Yeah.
You see that? Beautiful.
Yeah, these are quite bright. Notice also the people on the right-hand side where you're looking from the back, look how straight their shoulders are.
Yeah, very.
And then their necks are erect, so you can see their chin clearly above their shoulders, which is really good form. So, again, people who understand archery, I think also what we might be seeing is quite large men shooting standard arrows because they're drawing to about here.
Yeah.
Because they're maybe your height and they're using standard arrows that are maybe 72 centimeters long, which are a bit short perfect for me. Was hey, us short people sometimes get benefits out of life.
Yeah. And then again, look at the armor. Again, here we see this. Here we see brigandine. You see what we saw in other miniatures here.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And what I really like about this, we have seen the other ones as well, but in this miniature, all horses have armor.
Yeah. I think it, and some people say, oh, well, they just drew it because they could, and it doesn't cost anything. No, I think, and this is in text as well, armored horses were much more common than a lot of historians relate. Not historians from Iran or Mughal India, but it was quite common. The other thing you might notice is because of the position of the horse's feet, you can see the shape of the horseshoes, which are the Arab shape, not the European shape.
Yeah.
So the Arab shape is like that with a little inset in it, and the horseshoe is much thinner, but it covers more of the inside of the horse's hoof,
Yes.
which means that it's better for protecting the horse from stones and things like that.
Yes.
Oh
And,
yeah, there's a lot of
and,
detail in that.
and here again, Sinekesh. You see that?
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's interesting. I've seen again on YouTube modern archers shooting this way. I'm not quite sure why. Because Sinekesh has issues about accuracy. Because it's quite good for long distance shooting,
Yeah.
but short distance shooting, you've got like a gap between where the arrow is and where your eyes are.
Yeah.
When you're shooting from here, the gap is very small,
Yeah.
and it instinctively your brain fixes that problem. But when you're shooting down here, at long distance it's okay, but at short distance I find it's not as good.
Mhm.
So my feeling
Yeah.
is what they're thinking about painting it like that
Yeah.
is it's fast.
Yeah.
It's to say, I've got to get this arrow off.
Yeah.
It's haste
Yeah.
rather than good form.
And look at this one again, Sinekesh. You see that?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, that's a kind of classic
Mm.
oh well we got oh that's a nice one.
Mm. Really?
Again, the kind of position of the arrow is a bit wobbly, and he's got his quiver on the same side as his sword, which is really unusual.
Yeah.
Actually, in this painting, everybody's doing that. That's really unusual. And looking at the position of everything, the sword is indicating the handedness of the person. The quiver, I don't know. I don't know why they did it that way.
And what is very interesting is, as you know, for example, Shah Abbas the first is often depicted with his sword. And I also handled one of his swords in Iranian
Hanging down
museum,
like that.
which
Yeah.
is the edge. He carried his sword edge up. Shah
Yeah.
Abbas did it, not edge down. Because you know that depending on how our bands are, it can be very edge down or
Yeah,
up.
but
And look at
I've
this. Look at
yeah.
the bazoo
Yeah,
band. Look at this.
they don't have any inside. They just got straps.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you see that, like, it's not fluted really. The same bazoo band with decoration I saw in Military Museum of Shiraz. The same thing. It's really
Yeah, yeah. I
fascinating.
think that was quite common at that period.
Yeah,
Um,
very fascinating.
there's a couple of other interesting. Well, the reason the swords end up like that, and I've handled a beautiful, what was it, 1690s Turkish sword in the Shamshir style. It had the rings on the back of the scabbard, but it had its original belt, and the belt was designed for the sword to sit edge up,
Yes,
even though the rings were on the other side. And it was
absolutely.
because of the curve, the sword flipped over.
Yeah.
You didn't
I mean,
actually.
yeah.
I
Swords,
yeah,
definitely, even the position of band could be carried edge up or edge down. And we have also indication not only in miniatures, but also in real cases of swords, and also in describe edge down or edge up, how they carried it. So they're also in the text. That's really fascinating to watch
oh
or to read these things.
yeah. Well, again, this is showing the artist is showing something real that's happening that he's seen
Yeah,
and he's aware of. I'm not so sure about the quiver position. I think he might have just wanted to show the quivers
yeah,
because they're pretty. And
yeah,
the
pretty, yeah.
bow cases are much bigger and would maybe not make the painting look quite as good as he wanted it to look. It's interesting to note the archer at the top with the big black beard. See how they've shown his shoulders all hunched? Like, he's pulling a really heavy bow. The other thing is that the position of the arrow is actually there between the
Here,
yeah,
here.
between the index and and on this guy too. So the artist drawing the arrow hasn't drawn the arrow where the arrow is sitting. They've kind of, they wanted the arrow to line up with this guy's face, so they moved it down the hand a bit. And the other guy is the same. I don't think there was a style of shooting where you balance the arrow there or there, because it's just the arrow falls off. It's just not going to work. I think it's just the artist has drawn it there because he gets the line better.
Yeah.
And this is a thing that, occasionally you've got to accept the fact that artists do weird things.
Look at this one. Against Sinekesh.
Yeah. And again, a right-handed archer shooting left-handed on the right side, and a right-handed archer shooting right-handed on the left side. The person shooting on the right side clearly has the arrow sitting on the thumb correctly. The guy on the left side, it's a bit stylized, and you can't really see where the arrow is. It's the arrow is just a painted white line. And it may not even be finished.
Yeah.
They may sometimes arrows and bridles and reins are done at the last minute, and they're not always as precise as you would expect. But still, it's pretty nice.
Look at this. Interesting.
That's more precise. You can see the index finger separated from the other fingers.
Yes.
In the drawing. Yes. Again, you can see the arrow sitting on the thumb correctly. The draw is probably not that short. A real archer wouldn't draw that short, I don't think. I think the reason it's like that is there's, even going back to the Timurid period, there's paintings of people where they've basically drawn the bow too small.
Yeah.
And they've just extended their forearm so that they can get the hand in the right position.
Let me see, Bede, if we have. Oh, I think I forgot that. I forgot to include any abrukesh. Is this abrukesh?
I think so, yes.
It is abrukesh, yes.
I think
this one is abrukesh, yes, exactly.
Yeah. The other one is tending towards it, whereas the others are here, but that was there and there. Exactly. I think is abrukesh.
Yeah, this is abrukesh. I was looking for that. Yes.
Yes,
that's
and it's interesting because they're showing different draws, even though some of the other things in the painting aren't quite good, like the fact that everybody on that side is shooting left-handed and everybody on that side is shooting right-handed, which is clearly just an artistic thing. Oh, except you've always got one guy that's going to screw it up. The guy next to the guy in the orange and yellow, he's actually shooting right-handed, but he's on the right-handed side of the painting. But
yes, he is. Not even. But just one point, please, guys. Abrukesh, they're also called sormekesh, means eyebrow draw. Just because I didn't translate, okay, that's what it means. This guy.
Yeah, very much so.
Yes.
This is really quite interesting. The even again on the guys on the left hand side, you can see two different positions of the bow hand. The people on the right hand side are all doing some form of turn down changalibas type thing, but the guy in the red on the left hand side, his hand is further up. I'm sorry, I've only got an arrow to hold this. So you've got that, and you've got that.
Yeah.
The artist is clearly aware of these things. He's not terribly worried about right or left-handedness. This is not important, except for composition purposes. Everybody looking that way is shooting right-handed. Everybody looking that way is shooting left-handed.
To end our discussion today, you need to give these guys credit, especially this guy he was holding his hand close to the dragon mouth, that
Yeah.
close. Give credit to him, please, for his
Yeah.
courage.
Possibly he used to shoot fire arrows and he's not terribly worried about flames near his hand.
Exactly.
Honestly, uh, I'm not up to fighting dragons. I think if I saw a dragon, I'd head the other way.
Exactly. Okay,
But
that
the
was
guy on the
really,
horse, he's fairly calm. I mean, he's
yeah.
thinking, hey, these guys will finish it off. I'm safe.
Then I might just stop sharing. It was really beautiful, beautiful miniatures, aren't they?
Oh, yes, yes.
Really nice. And
This is the thing. They're really vigorous. They have life.
yes,
They're not, I mean, a lot of people say, oh, Middle Eastern and Asian art in general is very static. It's not. Look at that. That's so dynamic.
but you pointed it out. I never watched that closely because normally I always spend time and concentrate on human beings. But you just opened my eyes today because I started to look and say, like warriors. I mean, the man here
Yeah.
looks so brave and courageous, and horses were mostly afraid. Did you see the difference?
Yeah.
Horses were always afraid, looking with big eyes, wide shot, and guys were very, very courageous.
You notice when they show Rustam's horse,
Yes,
it's always really quite fierce.
yes,
It's not
yes.
frightened of anything.
No, no,
But
that's right.
horse,
That's true. That's the difference. Exactly. That's the difference.
this is,
Okay,
but
Bede. Yes,
yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say it is so invigorating to look at these.
Yes,
And as I say, as long as you don't take them as manuals,
yes,
but instead as observations, sometimes of what's happening and sometimes of what's not. If you first look at them as art, you get a great benefit out of it. And then if you look deeper and say, oh, what are they trying to show us? You can learn quite a bit.
yes. Absolutely. 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 And then it is also extremely important, that Middle Eastern arts, let's talk about Persian especially, we have really how many, like hundred thousands of miniatures and so many books depicting warfare, right? And when it comes and say, it's so funny. Sometimes people come and say, oh, were they allowed to make pictures, to draw, make paintings? And say, are you kidding me? Are you really kidding me? You know how many? This is unbelievable, right?
Yeah, it is, because when you look at it, you've got particularly things like manuals of medicine for horses
Yeah,
often have like anatomical drawings. I mean,
yeah,
they're not always what we would draw, but they're quite um vivid. I mean, with
yes,
your horse laid out and all its bits laid out around it. Uh, and they're produced as far west as the Maghreb in Morocco
yeah,
and all that. You've got all of this painting from Mamluk Egypt,
yes,
where the very strict religious people, but this is manuals of how to. Well, sometimes it's warfare, but sometimes it's farming. There's manuals on farming showing water wheels and everything from
yeah, yeah,
Al Andalus in Spain.
yes,
You've got other illustrations from
yeah,
the Jazeera from the 13th, 14th centuries. Obviously, there's Seljuk art with figures. There's Ottoman art with figures. Persian art going back a long way.
no,
I mean, there's sculptures, stucco and whatever from the Samanids, Ghaznavids. I mean, there was, and obviously the Mughals really like painting as well.
yeah.
Um,
And
so
yeah, mm.
yeah,
One
go
thing
on.
just before we finish it, I just wanted to mention, Pete, maybe this is interesting for you. I don't know if I have mentioned it, but I'm getting more and more. Yesterday, one of our colleagues in an Iranian museum asked me whether I would be interested because they have like hundreds of handwritten documents and books and manuals and what? And he said on how to wash yourself when you go to the bathroom. And all these guys argue with each other. So the whole procedure takes 1 to 2 hours. Whether you should start with your fingers, take your fingernail, or wash your feet, and what kind of soap you use, how long do you let it rest, and then get a massage. And everyone claims this is the best way to be clean at the end. And I just said, "Are you kidding me?" He said, "No, there are so many, and all these scholars are fighting over centuries. My method makes you, really clean." And I just said, God, we have so many beautiful things. I mean, it's beautiful, isn't it? Let's face
Yeah,
it. It's really
it's
beautiful. You know,
well, personal hygiene
yeah,
elevated to an art form.
to an art form. Yeah. So it's not only about warfare, as you said, agriculture, about this, about cuisine,
And manners.
cooking.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
good manners, how to, treat people in society. This
Yeah.
is all, it's not only interesting, sometimes it's very insightful into
Yeah.
human beings, not just Iranians or Turks or
Yeah.
whatever, but human beings. We're all the
Yeah.
same under the skin, and we all
Of
have the
course.
same needs and whatever. And
Of course.
everybody's gone through historical periods, not them personally, but their ancestors,
Yeah.
when things were really nasty and harsh.
Yeah.
So, some are still going through it, which is sad. Um, but, it, deep down, we're all very similar. And some of us are really artistic and come up with these wonderful manuscripts and insights into human behavior. I think it's wonderful.
That's true. Okay. Thank you very much, Pete. I wish you a nice day and see you soon. Thank you.